Today we're going to talk about financing or leasing a tow truck. And it's pretty hard to find good information on the internet about financing and leasing tow trucks. In fact, the few websites that are out there say almost nothing or only provide information about programs you're probably not going to qualify for. So we thought maybe you'd like some real information. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly about tow truck financing. So let's talk about what it takes to actually finance or lease a tow truck. And first I want to mention, we're not always going to be the best choice for you. If you've got a long time in business and perfect credit and you're buying a new or almost new tow truck, first of all, your dealer may provide free or almost free financing. Or you can just go to your bank and get very inexpensive financing, which us and other private equipment financing companies won't be able to compete with. Now, there's 4 types of lenders that finance tow trucks. There's credit lenders, cash flow lenders, structured lenders, and collateral lenders. So credit lenders look at 3 things. They look at your credit score, your credit depth, and how long you've been in business. The longer you've been in business, the lower your credit score needs to be in order to qualify with a credit lender to finance a tow truck. And when I talk about credit depth, I mean a couple of things. Number one, you need to have several what's called trade lines. And a trade line is anything on your credit report, whether you financed a car or your home or have a credit card. You usually want to have 4 or more trade lines to qualify at any credit lender. Also, they're going to look at how long your credit history is. When did you get your first loan or credit card? And that should be 5 years or more. And lastly, they're going to look at what's called comp credit. Comp credit means having financed an installment line in the past, usually another business equipment or a vehicle, like if you purchased a car or something. Now, credit lenders are going to be usually the least expensive option and need the lowest down payment. But if you don't qualify for a credit lender, you can also go to what's called a cash flow lender. And what a cash flow lender looks at is what's your cash flow. And specifically, they want to know, relative to the cost of the equipment, what's your cash flow on a monthly basis, meaning revenue. So if you're doing in your business $25,000 a month, and you're purchasing a $25,000 tow truck because they look for about a 1-to-1 ratio, in most cases, you're going to qualify to finance that tow truck. Now, if you don't meet either of those qualifications, you can go to what's called a structured lender. Structured lenders try to find ways to make deals work, but there's a caveat. They're going to do some digging. You'll usually need to show tax returns, you'll need to show bank statements, and they're going to look for some sort of positive to get over the hump of what may be your very short time in business or some credit problems. And usually it's going to come with a higher payment, and typically you'll need to do what's called structuring, which means a higher down payment, or you may have to put up some collateral. Now, if you can't get financed with a structured lender, the last option is what's called collateral lenders. Collateral lenders are pretty simple. They usually look for either a 50% down payment or collateral equal in value to the equipment you're purchasing. So if you're purchasing a $25,000 tow truck, you need to come up with vehicles or equipment or some other thing of value that's worth at least $25,000. So let's talk about financing a tow truck if you're a startup business, because startup businesses is the riskiest type of financing. That's because half of all businesses fail within the first 4 years. For that reason, you're going to need a little bit higher of a credit score, and your rates will be a little bit higher if you're a startup. Typically, you're looking at least a 640 credit score for the best startup financing programs. Now, if you don't have that, you can still go the collateral or the structured route, but you're going to have to jump through a few more hoops. You're going to have to show tax returns, you're going to have some money in the bank, you're going to have to show your bank statements, and you may be asked for a business plan. Let's talk about how much down payment you'll actually need to finance a tow truck. Most tow truck financing programs require a minimal down payment, either a first or a first and last payment plus some fees. But your down payment is going to depend on how risky your situation is. For example, if you're a startup with poor credit, you're going to need 50% down or you're going to need collateral. However, if you've got poor credit and you're an established business, there's a much larger range. In fact, sometimes we see, especially with 10 or more years in business, even with credit scores down into the 500s, we'll see folks offered those lower down payment programs, either one or two payments. But again, how risky you are will determine that. So if your situation is particularly scary, you still may need a large down payment. Now, the longer you've been in business, the more a lender will overlook. Let's talk about tow truck financing with bad credit, because bad credit can sometimes be overcome and sometimes it can't. It really just depends on the situation. There are three things that will keep you out of a tow truck. The first is overdue child support, the second is an open bankruptcy, and the third is a repo, although if you've been in business for 10 or more years, oftentimes we can get past a repo. The thing to remember with bad credit, sometimes you're going to need a larger down payment, and I can guarantee you the payments you may be offered are going to be higher than if you had perfect credit. So it's very important when you're looking at offers from companies, if you're getting higher monthly payment offers, you need to determine, does this offer make sense for me in my business? Do I make enough money from use of the tow truck to justify that higher payment? Okay, let's talk about tow truck financing rates. And tow truck financing rates have a pretty large range depending on your credit, your time in business, and a couple of other things. And I want to mention, you're going to be quoted in payments unless you're going to your bank or to a dealer, not as an APR or an interest rate, but it really doesn't matter. Get the best deal you can, but APR means absolutely nothing. You need to go do what's best for your business and what's going to make your business the most money. A lot of times we'll have customers, they get quoted a payment and they go over it with their family, and their brother-in-law says, well, that's a ridiculous interest rate, and then they don't go forward. Don't let your brother-in-law talk you out of achieving your dreams because he thinks the payment's too high. Just make sure it makes sense for your business. Now, rates depend mightily on your credit, and here's what you'll actually see. Let's imagine you're financing a $25,000 tow truck and you're going to pay it off over 5 years. Now, for the best situations, a lot of time in business, decent credit, you might see a payment of about $575 a month. For the worst situations, lousy credit, you can barely get approved, that same tow truck over 5 years is going to run about $1,000 a month. Now, most of the time, most people are going to be somewhere in the middle, not the absolute best situation, not the absolute worst situation, and their payment's going to be somewhere in the middle between that $575 and that $1,000. It might be $700, it might be $750, it might be in the sixes. It just depends on what your individual numbers look like. So let's finish up. Most people who try to finance a tow truck will ultimately be approved, but the payments and how much down payment is needed will depend on your situation. If you click below in the description, you can get to our website and we'll talk to you about your individual situation and give you guidance based on what you tell us you're looking to do and what your situation looks like.